Welcome, everyone. I'm Alfred Webre, and I've got my brand new Omniversity T-shirt on. And Omniversity is an e-learning platform, and we're greatly privileged to have Samuel Chong on again, who has brought us not his knowledge of the Thaoouba-Prophecy book. So what we decided today is going to be a very interesting sort of exercise, because chapter 11 of the Thaoouba-Prophecy is entitled, Who Was Christ? And part 4 of the Urantia book is called The Life and Teachings of Christ. And I'm holding here a book, which you can get on Amazon by typing in my name there, called A Revelation on the Life and Teachings of Christ, which we'll discuss later, which the secret CIA time travel unit has gone back in time through time travel and made a secret time travel documentary going back of the crucifixion and the resurrection of the historical Jesus Christ. They actually filmed the historical Jesus being crucified and the resurrection, and that's described in here. And I've spoken to whistleblowers who've actually seen the secret video documentary of the crucifixion, and who've talked to people who've seen the secret CIA time travel video documentary of Jesus's resurrection. And then we're going to talk about all of this. So this is to get, sort of an in-depth and who was Christ. So chapter 11 of the Thiaoouba book discusses who was Christ. So Samuel, we're just going to go to a screen share here to the Thiaoouba prophecy. Can you see that? It says, who was Christ? So
yes,
I'll just put that up there so that it becomes more tangible for people. So could you explain to us, please, what the Thiaoouba Prophecy book is? And we'll put up links to the Thiaoouba Prophecy book so that people can access it. But what is this book? What is its source? Could you just explain that for us?
Yes, the book Thaoouba-Prophecy is a book written by the French author Michel Desmarquet, who says that he was taken away by this group of highly advanced, highly knowledgeable ETs to their planet called Thaoouba for 9 days and then back. And this book writes about his personal experiences of what he encountered, what he observed, and also experienced. And the ETs gave him a lot of information regarding where we all came from, and also some of the mysteries of the paranormals on Earth, such as the Great Pyramid in Egypt, the Bermuda Triangle, the stories in the Bible, such as who was Christ, which is actually the reason I was totally convinced that this has to be the truth. It has to be what Michel Desmarquet personally experienced, because it answers all the questions that I had when I was reading the Bible for the first time.
Right. Now, you mentioned that the extraterrestrials are are from a planet called Thiaoouba. Do you want to give some of the highlights that they say? And then we'll get into this particular chapter. But what are some of the highlights that they say in this book?
Yes, the planet is called Thaoouba, or sometimes the French pronunciation will be Jehovah, similar to the pronunciation Jehovah, as in the Bible. And according to this group of ETs, they have always been watching us and guiding us and mentoring us throughout history, throughout the ancient past. And according to them, they were responsible for the destructions of the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. They were responsible for leading Moses out of Egypt, giving manna to the ancient Hebrews, parting the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, but the Sea of Reeds, and helping Moses to lead the Hebrews, ancient Hebrews, from the collapse of the pharaohs of the ancient Egyptians, and they were responsible for the birth of Jesus and the appearance of Christ to us. And according to them, Jesus and Christ were two different beings: one Jesus, one Christ. They were also responsible for preventing Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb. And their planet is like a paradise to us. Before Michel Desmarquet approached their planet, he saw like a golden mist surrounding the planet. And then he saw that the planet was very, very beautiful, with very vibrant lights and colors, that he had to wear facial masks like sunglasses to filter out the strong lights and colors. And he was also very interestingly observing how the Thaoubans lived on the planet. They were able to perform miracles like Christ did on Earth, like levitation and materializing objects, and also healing the different diseases that Michel Desmarquet had. And also they had communicated with each other through telepathy, and also communicated with Michel Desmarquet through telepathy. In fact, they told Michel Desmarquet that he would have been able to perform the miracles if he learned it, but in his lifetime he wouldn't have been able to because of certain limitations that he had. So those group of people, the Thaoubans, also taught Michel Desmarquet a lot of the basic principles of life, the meaning of life, and also how God created everything, like the different stars and planets, plants and animals and human beings on Earth, and also different lifetimes like reincarnation, concepts of a person being able to reincarnate in different lifetimes. And also they took Michel Desmarquet to visit his past lives. And they told Michel Desmarquet a lot of interesting things that Michel Desmarquet was so amazed, and he really didn't want to come back to Earth.
Right. So I'm just going through here, and I want to oh, here we go. They come here with the Hebrews, and so they're introducing. This is on page 140, and they introduce the Hebrews, and they say, now let's jump in time. The Hebrews, back again in the land they originally settled, were now better organized. They established a civilization notable for great royal legislators like Solomon and David, to name but a two. The Hebrew people were unanimously elected by the great Thaouri. What does Thaouri mean? by the great Thaoouba. Okay, can you see
Yes.
that?
The
That
Thaoouba are the seven,
yeah, go ahead.
yes. The Thaoouba are the seven masters of the planet Thaoouba. So on their planet, there are regular people like us, but there are
Yeah,
also seven masters, which they called Taura, and the plural of Taura is Tauri. So
I
they
see.
chose the Hebrews. Yes.
Oh, I see. So the planet Thiaoouba is a human planet. That is, the creatures there are humans.
Like humans, like
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Yes.
humans. Now, as I understand it, in this book, the origin of the Hebrew people, and let me tell me if I'm wrong, but I'd like to ask you, what does this book say about the origin of the Hebrew people? It has a very unusual story of the origin of the Hebrew people. Could you relate that?
Yes. We all came from different planets. The blacks and the yellows came from a planet called Baccaratini about 1.35 million years ago. The ancestors of the Polynesians came later, and the Caucasians came after that. And the Hebrews came about 12,000 years ago from a different planet called Hebra. And the Hebrews were very different in a sense because their planet was a Category 3 planet, but Earth was or is a Category 1 planet. So the blacks and the yellows and the Caucasians and Polynesians, they all came from a Category 1 planet. But the Hebrews originally came from a Category 3 planet accidentally. So they came here by accident, by chance, by the failure, because of a failure of their spacecraft. So there are a total of Category 9, like a total of 9 different categories of planets in the universe. Number 1, Category 1 is the lowest category, and Category 9, like the Thaoouba, they're a Category 9 planet. So as we progress, as we evolve spiritually, we move up the ladder to a higher category of planet. So this is why the Thaoubans, the Jehovans, being inhabitants of a highest category of a planet, they were able to constantly monitoring us and guiding us and mentoring us throughout the ancient past in history. And this is where the Hebrews came from. Like they came from a Category 3 planet, like a higher level than us, the original inhabitants of Earth. So they encountered a lot of very interesting historical events that were unique to the Jewish people, the Hebrews.
I see. Okay. And so the Hebrew people were unanimously elected by the great Tower on earth. They were referred to as, quote, the chosen people, and the name could not be more appropriate. They were indeed chosen. Our plan was to capture public imagination. I'm just reading here from this. By sending a messenger of peace. The story of the birth of Jesus, as you know it, with the Virgin Mary as mother, is quite true. The appearance of an angel at the Annunciation is correct in every detail. We sent a spaceship, and one of us appeared before the Virgin, who was indeed a virgin, telling her she was going to become pregnant. The embryo was implanted in her while she was pregnant. And then he says, I see, Michael, you are having enormous difficulty believing what I have been saying. Never forget that we have the knowledge. You have not seen 1/10 of what we can do. Attend carefully, and I will give you a few examples to help you understand what I'm telling you. Is Michel the Earth scribe who went there for 9 days? Is that it?
Yes, he was on planet Thiaoouba for 9
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thao stopped talking and appeared to be concentrating. As I watched, her face became blurred. Instinctively, I rubbed my eyes. Thao, I called slightly, where are you? Hello, Michel. So this is like back and forth. Okay, so they're just going back and forth here. I'm just going to scroll down to when they talk about Christ again, because part of it is just back and forth with the scribe. Let me just go back and forth.
Yes, he showed Michel Desmarquet some of the miracles, such as
Oh yeah,
disappearing
yeah,
in
sure.
front of him.
Here we go. So our angel implanted an embryo so that Mary, a virgin, found herself pregnant. By acting in this way, we hope to attract the attention of the people and emphasize that the coming of Jesus was a remarkable event. On the birth of the child, we appeared before the shepherds in the same way that I demonstrated a few moments ago. We didn't send the 3 famous wise men. They are part of the legend that has been grafted onto real events. However, we did guide the shepherds and a group of people towards the spot where Jesus was born. This was accomplished by sending forth one of our spheres and rendering it luminous. So these are extraterrestrial spheres, I guess. The optical effect thereby created made it indeed resemble a star over Bethlehem. Nowadays, if we would do such a thing, people would be crying UFO. So it was an extraterrestrial event. It was a UFO event. Eventually, the priests and those who the priests named prophets learned of the birth. In view of the phenomena of the star and the angels, the prophets announced to the people the birth of the Messiah, referring to him as the King of the Jews. And I guess because there was a connection between them and the extraterrestrials in their minds, and the Jews and the extraterrestrials, so they were thought as the chosen because their spaceship had crashed there and they were always thought as super intelligent. So this child came, even though Mary was a virgin, she got pregnant and there was a luminous UFO. So they made those connections. This is the people. I'm sort of guessing, right? Is that why?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eventually,
kind of like a remarkable event. Yes.
yeah, remarkable event. Eventually, the priests named prophets learned of the birth in view of the phenomena of the star and the angels. The prophets announced to the people the birth of the Messiah, referring to him as the King of the Jews. Herod, however, had spies in all quarters. King Herod, as most leaders do, when they reported these remarkable events to him, he found it all difficult to understand and became frightened. In those times, the lives of the people were worth little to their leaders, and Herod had no qualms about ordering the deaths of 2,606 babies in the region. While these deaths were being carried out, we evacuated under hypnosis Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus, as well as 2 donkeys in our spaceship, depositing them in a spot quite close to Egypt. Do you see how the facts have been distorted? So here, what the Thiaoubas are saying is that they interfered directly by taking up Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus and evacuating them out of danger from King Herod's killing to a safe spot in Egypt. They were evacuated by spaceship. So this is kind of the inside story. And now there are other details which were reported conscientiously, but they are inaccurate due to lack of information. Let me explain. The baby Jesus born in Bethlehem proved by the miracles pertaining to his birth that he was quite special and was in fact the Messiah. So we had captured the imagination of the people, but when a baby is born and its astral body cannot know all in regard to its previous knowledge, this was the case of Moses too, and yet he was a great person. We required a messenger who would be able to persuade humanity that there was another life beyond this one through reincarnation of the astral body, etc. This was no longer commonly accepted since civilization on Earth had become more and more degraded following the disappearance of Atlantis. You know that when you want to explain something that is not a material fact. In order to transmit our message, we needed someone who behaved like an extraordinary being, like someone coming from, quote, the heavens, who performed what would appear to be, quote, miracles. Such a person would be believed and his teachings would be listened to. As you know, an astral body being reincarnated as a baby passes through the river of oblivion and his earlier material knowledge is effaced. Therefore, a child born in Bethlehem would not have been able to perform miracles even if he lived to 100 years of age. However, he was a superior being like Moses. This is proven by the way he astonished temple doctors at the age of 12. Like the very young people now on earth who are called geniuses because they seem to have a calculation in their heads, Jesus was a human being inhabited by highly evolved astral body. And yet, even if he had studied in the very advanced schools on earth, among the Nagas, for example, he never could have acquired the knowledge to revive the dead or cure the sick. I know that on earth there are people who believe that from the age of 12 until his return to Judea, Jesus studied in the monasteries of India and Tibet. This is how they try to explain the gap that exists in the Bible when Jesus simply disappeared from Bethlehem. He left his parents' home at the age of 14, accompanied by his 12-year-old brother, Uriki. He traveled to Burma, India, China, and Japan. His brother accompanied Jesus everywhere until Uriki was accidentally killed in China. Jesus took a lock of Uriki's hair with him, for he loved it very much. Jesus was 50 years of age when he arrived in Japan, where he married and had 3 daughters. Finally, he died in the Japanese village of Shingo, where he had lived for 45 years. He was buried in Shingo, which is on the main island of Japan, Honshu, and beside his tomb is another containing the little box holding Uriku's lock of hair. Those of your fellow men who like evidence can go to Shingo, formerly known as Hadai, in the district of Aomori. Let's go back to our precise mission in this regard. The only messenger we could send to earth had to be one of us. The Christ who died on the cross in Jerusalem was called Aadio. He was brought by us to the desert of Judea, having volunteered to change his physical body. Thus, he abandoned his hermaphrodite body, which had lived some considerable time on Thaoouba, and took on the body of Christ, created for him by our Thaoouba. By doing so, he made totally the knowledge he possessed on Thiaoouba. Why he couldn't have remained in his body and simply reduced it in size, as Latoli and Biastra did in front of me. Couldn't he have stayed long enough in a shrunken body? There was another problem, Michel. He had to resemble a human being from Earth in all respects. Since we are hermaphrodites, we couldn't risk the Hebrews noticing that this messenger from God was half female. Well, this gets pretty far out. We can regenerate a body
Yes.
at will, is why you have seen so few children on Thiaoouba. We can also create a body, as I have explained, and we can reduce it in size. Don't look at me like that, Michel. Jesus who came from Thiaoouba was taken by us into the desert, and you know what followed. He knew that he would come up against numerous difficulties and that he was going to be crucified. He knew all, for he had previewed his life with us, but he had done so as an astral body in a physical body. He remembered, just as you will remember and will always remember, your journey to Mu and the glimpses of your previous years. The visits, I repeat, seen by astral bodies and physical bodies are not erased in that way. So all his miracles were performed in order to prove that what he preached was true? Yes, because the Hebrews and the Romans would never have believed him if he hadn't proven himself. There was a very good example of the strength of skepticism among people on earth regarding the Shroud of Turin. Although millions of people believe in the coming of Jesus and practice more or less Christian religions, they were anxious to hear the results of research into whether or not the shroud covered Christ after his death. You now know the answer to this. However, people seeking more proof and still more proof of doubt through his own body. I believe faith is never perfect. Okay. I'm kind of scrolling through this now. So Christ was sent to earth to preach love and spirituality. He had to connect with people who were not highly evolved, speaking to them in parables. And when he tipped over the merchants' tables at the temple, angry for the first and only time, he was making a message against money. His mission was to impart a message of love and goodness, love one another, and also to enlighten the people in regard to the reincarnation of astral bodies and immortality. This was all distorted by priests in the time that followed, and numerous disagreements led to the rise of the many sects which claimed to follow the teachings of Christ. Christians throughout the centuries have even killed in the name of God. The Inquisition is a good example, and the Spanish Catholics in Mexico behaved worse than the most savage tribes, all in the name of God and Christ. Here, I'm trying to follow through here. The Master came 2,000 years ago, or rather, I should say one of the Masters, but men crucified him. However, for approximately 300 of your years, the message he brought with him was followed. After that, it was distorted on earth, you have returned to a point that is worse than that of 2,000 years ago. Okay, so what this says is that there was a Jesus who went off and died in Japan. What the function of that Jesus is, I don't know. But then there was a Christ who was from Thiaoouba, who was a hermaphrodite, because the Thiaoubans are hermaphrodites, that is, they're both male and female. And this Thiaouban came here, and he's the one who did the public life of Christ that we know from the Bible. Is that what they're saying? Yes?
And
Yes.
specifically, yes, that's right. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So is that the essential message that is being stated here in the book of Thiaoouba?
Yes, it is the essential message. Yes.
Yeah. So that is all contained here. There's no more here about Christ. Okay. So what I'm going to do now here is to stop share, and that is because we have to do that in Zoom. And now I'm going to start share, and I'm going to go up here to another share, and this is to the Urantia book, which is a channel text that was published in 1955, and it has through papers, okay? And this is, you can get it at urantia.org. And this purports to be the, an accurate version of the life of Jesus, more or less, in detail about what you see in the four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, okay? And so this has one of the versions. However, before we do that, let me just bring this out here. Here we have this here. And here we have, let's just go here to the birth and infancy of Jesus. So this is on the birth and infancy of Jesus. And here it explains about the choice of Joseph and Mary, okay? And Joseph, the human father of Jesus, Joseph and Joseph, was a Hebrew of the Hebrews, although he carried many non-Jewish racial strains. Joseph himself was a carpenter and later a contractor. Mary, the earthly mother of Jesus, was a descendant of a long line of ancestors, embracing many of the most remarkable women. She was an average woman of her day. No Jewish woman of that day had a more illustrious line. Strong but average individuals. In culture and belief, she was a Jew. Of all the couples, Joseph and Mary possessed ideal combination and superior but average endowments. And then Gabriel appears to Elizabeth. Mary, the mother of Jesus. Elizabeth was a member of the more prosperous branch of the same family group that Mary belonged to, and Gabriel, an angel, an interdimensional angel. So they don't talk about the extraterrestrials here, they talk about angels. I, Gabriel, have come to announce, oh, Gabriel appeared to Mary just as he later made his presence known to Mary. You will shortly bear a son who will be a forerunner. And so this is where the angel announced the birth of John the Baptist, who was like a forerunner of Jesus, who would be like Jesus's cousin, because Mary, Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, were the same family group. So they would be like cousins. And so, but Elizabeth kept the secret. And then Gabriel appeared to Mary at the middle of 8 BC. And later on, and announced to Mary that she was going to be a mother. And then Mary and Elizabeth got together and compared experiences secretly. So then, because they both supposedly had gotten pregnant from the angel, that there was no thing, whereas in the book of Thiaoouba, there's an artificial impregnation, right? So this is more kind of magical. Gabriel's announcement to Mary. So Gabriel appeared to Mary. I come at the bidding of one who is my master and whom you shall love and nurture. To you, Mary, I bring glad tidings that I shall announce that the conception within you, namely you're pregnant, is ordained by heaven, and that in due time you will become the mother of a son, and you shall call him Joshua, and he shall inaugurate the kingdom of heaven on earth and among men. Speak not of this matter save to Joseph and to Elizabeth, to whom I have also appeared, and who shall presently also bear a son, and whose name shall be John. And that's John the Baptist, and who shall prepare the way for the message of deliverance. No doubt, my word, Mary, for this home has been chosen as the mortal habitat of the child of destiny. My benediction rests upon you. So this is how the angel Gabriel set up the incarnation of Jesus. So it's a lot of preparation, but it's through angels. So you have to have a lot of faith of this. It's interdimensional through spiritual beings of angels. So it's different from the Thaoouba in the sense that the Thaoouba says, look, we're extraterrestrials and this is how we did it. It's a lot more transparent, right? They're saying, we did it through this extraterrestrial thing. And Christ was really a volunteer Thaoubian. We're hermaphrodites, so he had to do it hidden so they wouldn't discover him. So, so that's how it was done here. So that is the birth and infancy of Jesus. And then you can see here, it goes through the whole, there's a whole series of papers: The Adolescent, Early Manhood, On the Way to Rome, The World's Religions, Return from Rome, John the Baptist, Galilee, 12 Apostles, The Public, The Preaching Tour, More and More Preaching, is the feast, the last visits, the resurrection of Lazarus, the kingdom. This is during his public life. Into Jerusalem, the Last Supper, the betrayal and arrest of Jesus, the crucifixion. Here we have the crucifixion, the resurrection, and then you have the appearances afterward, the final appearances, and then when Jesus leaves. So that's like almost universe television. It's at this level of detail, okay? And this was all channeled to a group of people who took all the notes, and then they published them in 1955. Now, what we have, I'm going to change. Can you see this headline? CIA whistleblower,
Yes, I
top
can see
secret.
it.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a CIA whistleblower, Andrew D. Mishago. I spoke to him this afternoon, right before you and I spoke. Top secret CIA time travel unit made a video documentary of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. Okay? And that's a copy of this book that we published about this. And so what occurred there is that a CIA whistleblower and U.S. chrononaut has revealed, this is Andrew D. Mishago, that the CIA's top secret time travel unit made video documentaries of the historical crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. U.S. chrononaut Andrew D. Mishago, an eyewitness to the secret CIA time travel documentary of the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, and other witnesses to the CIA time travel documentary of the resurrection, state that the CIA documentaries confirm the version of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection set out in the Gospel of John of the New Testament, and also in part 4 of the Urantia Book. So it confirms that. See? And if it would confirm what's set out in the, presumably parts of what's set out in the Thiaoouba book, except that in the documentary, it doesn't talk about Jesus being an extraterrestrial from Thiaoouba. You see?
Right.
The documentary just says you see the crucifixion and you see the resurrection as it's depicted in the Gospels. You know, and you actually see an angel coming in the resurrection. When you watch the video documentary, you actually see an angel coming in, and Jesus is getting up, and the angel rolling back the stone, and Jesus walking out. You actually see that in the video documentary, because it's by time travel, but you don't see that he was an extraterrestrial. Okay, so there's no confirmation that it was an extraterrestrial. It's just, So So what we have is a confirmation of the basic story, just like you don't see a confirmation of the story of Urantia and your story of Urantia confirms the story of the Gospel of John in the New Testament, and that is that the angel comes down and says, you're going to be pregnant with the Messiah to Mary, right? That's what they say in the Gospel. But that's what Urantia says, but not what Thiaoouba says. But the documentary just confirms the resurrection and the crucifixion as a video, as it's, there's a video documentary, that's all. So that's what we have there. Which is kind of interesting, right? But
yes,
so we're left up in the air about all of this, except that we're left up in the air with Urantia is promoting the version of the three Gospels, the four synoptic Gospels, and Urantia supposedly came through as a channeling in 1955. This is the book. It's about 2,000 plus pages long. 2,000 plus pages long. And so if they're promoting it in 2000 and they're supposed to be, they're channeled, and in their channeling, they're saying, this is the fifth apocalyptic revelation and it's authorized by paradise, by God for earth. And the fourth apocalyptic revelation was Jesus came as a person. And so we've decided to release the fifth apocalyptic revelation as a book with all of the, and this fills in all the blanks, right? In other words, it has part one. It has parts one, part two, part three. Part one, part two, part three is cosmology. This part one is the central and super universe. Part two is the local universe. Part three is the history of Urantia. The Urantia is the name of this planet, Earth, Urantia. And then part four is the life and teachings of Jesus. Okay. Now, if this was released in 1955 and it was authorized by paradise and God, and if in fact it was a Thiaoouba and Jesus was a Thiaoouba, it would say, well, we want to tell you that Jesus was Christ was a Thiaoouba, because we're the final word, right? And if Thiaoouba have been in charge of our affairs, they would say, oh, let me see here. I just want to go here. Let me go up here. I'm not making any judgment. I'm just stating facts, okay?
And I'll let you know my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Here we have the publisher is 2004, right? So 2004. So Thiaoouba came after 1955. After the Urantia book was published, Thiaoouba would say, well, we know that the Urantia book came out in 1955, and that was the latest word. So the Urantia book is right. And they wouldn't have said, they would have said something else. So here we have two different sources of superior intelligence, the Urantia book and the Thiaoouba book, that have the same version going through, but different actors. One is a Thiaoubian, the other one was planted by the angels and the Holy Spirit. You see what I'm saying? And then we have the CIA supposedly, and we have witnesses who've seen the secret documentaries, where the crucifixion and the resurrection is approximately the same in both the Thiaoouba and the Urantia Book and the four synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So I'm just summing up. I'm not stating one or the other. So I just want to sum that out. So I would like very much to get your thoughts and your thoughts on all of this now that we've kind of laid this out. So over to you.
Yes. So to me, I work with a lot of doctors and lawyers and in the real world, professional work. So I need to look at evidence in order to be convinced of anything. Evidence that we can see and touch and verify. So the Thiaoouba Prophecy book contains a lot of specific verifiable facts that people can do a lot of investigations and verifications. One thing is about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. I mean, before the book Thaoouba Prophecy was published in 1993, very few people knew about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Japan. Michel Desmarquet was a farmer, landscaper in Australia when he had this kind of unique experience. And he didn't know how to type. He didn't know how to use computers. And there was no internet back then in Australia because Australia was lagged behind the US in the development of the internet technologies. So even if it had internet in Australia, he wouldn't have been able to use it because he didn't know how to type. And he was not able to serve and search the online effectively. And he never went to Japan. How would he have known about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan? That would have been a mystery if he wasn't informed by this fact by the Thaoubans. So nowadays, after I became like a spokesperson for the book and came out publicly, people did the research and investigations and search on Google about the tomb of Jesus in Japan, and people began to know that there's a legend in Japan in the village that Jesus lived until the age of 106. But this book tells us that Jesus actually died of 95 years old in Japan, in Shingo Village, Japan. And if people visit Shingo Village, Japan, they are going to see exactly as this book described. There's a tomb of Jesus, and there's a tomb next to Jesus, and people don't know what was inside of the other tomb. And this book tells us the lock of hair from Jesus' brother was buried in the other tomb. And people always wonder why in this village, Shingo Village, the local Japanese people sing a song that sounded like ancient Hebrew language. And they also had a very unique custom that's so different from the nearby villages. And people don't know why, and people didn't know why that's the cause. And this book, Thaoouba Prophecy, explains that indeed Jesus came from the Middle East, came from Bethlehem, and then died in Japan. And also this book explains why some people say that Jesus went to India. And indeed, Jesus did go to India and also went to China where his brother died accidentally. And then he went to Japan. And this book also explains another question that I had always in mind when I was reading the Bible for the first time, or maybe until I read the book Thaoouba Prophecy, is that after Jesus began preaching, after Christ began preaching, why he didn't call his mother mother when he saw her, but instead he called his mother woman. I'm a linguist and I study languages. And because I know that the fact that because mother and son have a special relationship, so special that not a single language in the world in which a son would call his mother woman under those circumstances, it just doesn't happen. Because mother and son are so special, we have to use a special word for mother. I mean, we wouldn't just call her a woman, just like every other woman. So this reading the Bible really questioned the, I was questioning about that fact when I was reading the Bible. So this book seems to me that explained perfectly why Christ, after he began preaching, called his mother woman, because he wasn't born from Mary. And also, this book specifically named the 4 different Catholic Church Council meetings that intentionally distorted the original meanings of the ancient scriptures. It's so specific. It's not like other books that's kind of are kind of vague and also just talk about general principles and ideas. This book is so specific to the facts that people can just verify, like what really happened in the Council of Nicaea, what really happened in the other 3 council meetings, and indeed, like the ancient, the Christians in the past believed in reincarnation. And later on, they didn't, because the Catholic Church removed the concept of reincarnation from the Bible. So this is something that's been verified and kind of questioned by different scholars in nowadays. And I think it's important to know that reincarnation exists, as verified and studied by medical doctors such as Dr. Ian Stevenson, Dr. Michael Newton, and Dr. Brian Weiss. They all studied reincarnation from different perspectives. And in terms of the CIA's documentary about the crucifixion of Christ, and that the book Thaoouba-Prophecy also verifies it from a different perspective, in the sense that it talks about a time machine. It explains what time machine is. The ETs actually took Michel Desmarquet back in time to the ancient civilizations when Lemuria, the continent of Mu, existed back 14,500 years ago. What they described what the time machine was is that people with practice, and also they could use different technologies to access what people would call the Akashic record. Because when a planet was formed, there's a kind of a mechanism by nature that records everything that happens on a planet. And it's just like a cocoon rotating at 7 times the speed of light. So everything happens on planets is recorded by this cocoon, what Michel Desmarquet would call the psychosphere. And people, if they want to access the time machine or the past, they would just match the vibrations of the cocoon to the time machine, and so that they can access the past. And the book is so specific and verifiable. It talks about the U.S. military, the governments, trying to develop their time machine. So it made me think about the Philadelphia experiment. And this book talks the failure, the reason for the failure of the U.S. government trying to develop a time machine back then in the 1980s, when the book was written. It says that the mistake they made was that they tried to match the frequency, but instead they should have try to match the vibrations. So frequency and vibrations are different. So wavelengths and vibrations are different. They try to match the wavelengths. So if you remember the Philadelphia experiment, they projected a different kind of frequency or wavelengths onto the ship in order to cloak the ship, so that the ship wouldn't be able to be discovered by the radars. So, but something strange happened. There's a distortion in time and space. So something weird and strange happened. So this book says if you try to match the vibrations, you can access the past. So Michel Desmarquet was led into the past. So he actually visited what happened when the continent of Lemuria sunk into the ocean. So what he saw was like a holographic film or projection in which he could witness and experience what happened in the past, but he couldn't change the past because he was an observer, to say the most, but he couldn't really interact with the people in the past. So this is what happens. So I would assume that the CIA or maybe the US government probably have successfully developed this time machine in order to see what happened in the past, so that they could actually record it. I hear also some other scientists they developed like a camera that actually saw the past, and I think that's doable, and that's possible and feasible and doable because it abides with the principles of the universe as described in this book, Thaoouba Prophecy. And I don't see any discrepancies between the CIA documentary to the book Thaoouba Prophecy because everything is possible. But in terms of Urantia, I would suggest people to look at specific verifiable facts in order to validate some of the information channeled by different people.
Yeah, well, thank you. You've made very interesting points. I'd like to ask you this question, and it's really around the identity of Christ itself, because the Thiaoouba prophecy makes a distinction between the identity of Jesus and the identity of Christ. Okay, so.
Yes.
And this is more on the identity of Christ. And the identity of Christ, both generally in the New Testament and also in the Urantia book, is that Christ is thought of as a paradise son of God. And that is that cosmologically speaking, you would have the deity. And so that deity bestowed sort of an incarnation of kind of itself, or a sub-deity that became a human on Earth, and that greatly privileged this Earth. You know, it really, people say it wiped away our sins. It kind of energized this Earth, and there are a lot of prophecies around that, quote, Messiah. So is that the way that the Thiaoouba thinks? It says it was the Messiah, or was it Jesus was the Messiah, or was Christ the Messiah?
According to the book Thaoouba Prophecy, Christ was the Messiah.
Or was the Messiah?
Yeah, Christ was the Messiah.
Yeah.
Because he preached,
yeah,
spirituality.
Okay, so that Christ was the Messiah, and so did that mean that the soul, that entity was a special entity?
Yes, it's a special entity, but I think when people try to say that Christ was Son of God, they're trying to explain the things that they couldn't explain, and by the fact that Christ really indeed performed all the miracles that they couldn't explain. So they just imagine that it must be the Son of God. It's just like, I'll give you an analogy. It's just trying to explain to the ancient people or the savages the dangers of the atomic bomb. We have to say, oh, this bomb is so dangerous that it's going to burn like a fireball, and we have to escape. We cannot, because the people at that time couldn't understand the concept of the atomic bomb. So similarly, we have to use a parable.
But let me ask you this: according to the Thiaoouba prophecy, we have the Christian religion, which has, it's one of the larger religions. I don't know which is larger, Buddhism or Christianity. It's one of the large ones.
Yes.
Is it proper to pray to Christ and to ask Christ, to pray and to ask Christ for salvation of your soul? Is that proper?
Well, it's proper in a sense if you really pray using your subconscious mind in order to hope and to fulfill some of the things that you wish to happen. But in reality, the more actually the best way is to connect to your higher self, because this book, Thaoouba Prophecy, explains the creation of the universe and the creation of mankind or humankind, and the purpose of life. Because when God created every one of us, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of our astral bodies. So we can connect to God directly on our own without going through the intermediary agencies like the religious organizations or pastors or priests. Because when we pray, we can connect to a higher self, which is connected to God, the source, the creator of the universe. So you can use maybe like an anchor. Maybe you can use Christ like an anchor to pray to, but really you're praying and hoping to connect to your higher self. So in a sense, I think the most important sentence in the Bible is the kingdom of God is within you. You can connect to God on your own without having to listen to the nonsense of the organized religions.
Very good. That's a very profound insight. Well, I certainly want to thank you for engaging at this level of conversation and insight. Are there any other words that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yes, I know that praying is effective to respond to the current challenges that everyone faces in his or her lifetime. Indeed, when you encounter difficulties or obstacles in life, you should either meditate or pray or concentrate and to receive answers from your higher self. Sometimes it comes from your intuition, sometimes it comes from your gut feelings, sometimes it comes from your dreams. So when you have challenges in your life, just either meditate, pray, or have a good night of sleep. I think it's important to know your true self and follow your own heart, your own intuition, and your higher self. It's important to follow the teachings of Christ as documented in the 4 Gospels of the New Testament in the Bible, because following the teachings of Christ will allow you to be more spiritual and to be rewarded after you pass away. Because when a person dies, there's going to be a life review process in which everything you did in your lifetime will be revealed and shown to you in a holographic film. And you're able to feel how the other people felt when you did certain things onto others. And you will evaluate yourself and decide what lessons to learn in your next lifetime when you reincarnate. So I think it's important to follow the teachings of Christ and to remember praying is always good for you, and meditating is always good for you, and always try to be your best and be a good person.
Thank you. That's very sound insights and sound advice. How can people remain in contact with you and stay in touch with your work? Do you have a website or an email address, or both?
Yes, I have a website which has a scholarship for anyone who reads the book Thiaoouba Prophecy. It's a $1,000 scholarship. You can go to chinasona.org to find the information about the scholarship, CHINASONA.org, and people can search me on Google or Facebook to find more information about me and my researches. And I hope everyone has an enlightened life.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Could you put that in the chat? Would that be possible in the?
Yes, I'll do that.
In the chat soon. Yeah. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you soon again here on Exopolitics TV. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.